Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mathew Lyner. This is Vanessa Miles, as you've just been introduced. I'll be talking to you about what unified communications actually looks like. We'll be providing two separate viewpoints. I'll be providing a technical overview of what unified communications is seen as, from my point of view anyway, within the industry and how that's implemented, as well as technically what Choice Support have implemented. And Vanessa will be giving an overview of Choice Support, the logistics, the problems that they've had as she's come into the business, and talking through the benefits they've realised. A tiny little bit about me. I've worked in the industry for 20 years this year. I didn't actually start out in communications. I was actually training to be a dentist at university. I started working for a telecoms firm. Deregulation allowed third-party equipment to be connected to the telecoms network. Further deregulation brought in Mercury Communications and many other network providers. The internet was born, mobile networks proliferated, and the businesses that I worked for evolved with these new technologies and began to supply all of these additional technologies. I've held managerial, technical and partnership positions in a number of companies, but my role has always been pre-sales, engineering and implementation.
Okay, yes, as I said, I'm Vanessa Miles. I've spent over about 20 years in the IT industry, and unlike Matthew, I was actually already planning to go in IT from the start. I've spent about 5 years as a consultant and worked through specialising in management technical requirements, and even pre-2000, this is showing age again, I was actually a Microsoft trainer and consultant for a small firm up in the northwest of England. About 14 years spent in banking as the head of functions. I was working primarily as head of systems. I looked after service delivery, project management, looking after general service desk, computer security, sort of you name it, a bag of all trades under that banner as well. So I joined Choice Support in 2014. I actually came in just for a couple of days of consultancy to look at a major project and major contract which wasn't delivering how the company expected. So at the end of the 3 days, I actually got offered a position to join them on a full-time basis to actually transform their IT infrastructure. So I've not been in the charity sector before. This was a new venture for me. It's actually quite enjoyable, though it was a complete shock of what it was like when I joined a charitable organisation and how IT was perceived in charities and actually how it operated. So one of the things about Choice Support is they are, and I need to read this because just bear with me, I'm not the knows the ins and outs of how charities operate. So Choice Support is an international social care charity providing support to people with learning disabilities and has been doing it for over 30 years. They enable people to lead their lives for what they want and support them for what's right for them. They encourage people to work within the services and they encourage the families to become involved and where Choice Support is working to as much as possible. So currently in Choice Support there's about 1,700 full-time and part-time staff working, providing support out to people with learning disabilities. Out of the top of that, we've got about 900 people we actually provide support to as well out in the sector. And on top of that, within all of those, in 1,700 staff, there's only about 300 which truly use IT day to day. Matthew.
Okay. What is unified communications? Clearly an incredibly subjective question. You'll get a lot of different answers depending on who you ask and what their agenda is. Ultimately, unified communications is just a buzzword. A flippant example would be if you do a Google search for unified communications today, Vodafone will be the #1 sponsored, I may add, result. And they would tell you that unified communications for small businesses just involves a smartphone and their network. I thought a simple definition would be good, so I've come up with one and plagiarised it off the internet. An evolving set of technologies that automise and unifies human and device communication into a more common context and experience. Very broad, as is unified communications. I think as important as what communications is, it's important to know why companies would use it. There's a lot of market push, not pull within the industry. So vendors are pushing on to customers what they believe they need, rather than customers actually working out what technology will do for them, what benefits, what return on investment. So the key really for me for unified communications is being able to correctly identify which technological aspects will work for that specific client and implementing it well. A good starting point would be a couple of fairly mainstream examples. Okay, I'll run you through these quite quickly. The first one is someone taking a real-time call. They can be in any location. So they can be in the office, they can be in their boardroom, they can be at their desk, they could be at home, they could be in a car. They can be on a number of different devices, whether that's a physical device or a physical desk phone. They can have a virtual phone, whether it's an application on a smartphone or a laptop. They could be a virtual user, so they could extend that out on the PSTN or GSM networks to their mobile. And the actual connectivity can either be wireless, wired, LANs, could be their wide area network, could be the internet from home, could be on a train, wherever. So that's a very simple, global example. The next example is a little bit more specific. And actually, imagine a scenario where example 1 has failed. The unified communications didn't work, they missed a call. And they receive a voicemail from a sender. So the key here is that they're notified of that voicemail a number of different ways, whether that's text, email, flashing lights on phones. They can then retrieve that voicemail a number of different ways and with varying degrees of control. So they can use a desk phone to control that, they can use an application to control and play back their voicemail. They could even just dial in using DTMF tones to play back a voicemail. That voicemail can be a media file, so they can play out of any compatible device. They can then return that communication, and how they return that communication depends on both ends, their status, whether they're online, what device they're on, and what connectivity. For example, if they had excellent connectivity and a very specific device, they could return it as a video call. It could be a standard voice call. Clearly, the requirements for that would be slightly less in terms of device and connectivity. If the user they're returning the call to isn't logged on to the voice network, for example, but they are on the corporate network, they could instant message them. But if they're not online anywhere, they are still able to return a non-real-time communication, either another voicemail back or an email. What is it comprised of? I thought it'd be useful to give some of the more common features that people actually perceive as what unified communications actually is. You've heard of most of these: instant messaging, voice over IP, massive buzzword. Audio, video, web conferencing are on the increase massively for organisations. Applications. Application level is in theory unified communications, particularly if it integrates with any form of computer telephony integration. Presence. If you don't know what that is, go back to the last slide where I said very much depending on what status a user is in terms of device and connectivity, that's their presence, and a user will broadcast that to other users so that they know, or they're intelligently able to decide how to contact that user. As important as those, I mean, I see those really as the sort of nice little fancy bits on the top, are the components that make up the communications platform for that unified comms. So transport, network, whether it's wired, wireless, mobile, the equipment, the core networks, end user devices, the roaming devices, and then the applications and the management on top of that.
Okay, so IT challenges at Choice Support. So, like I say, I joined them in 2014, and there were a number of issues which I walked into. Lack of engagement by our end users, unwillingness or unable to actually accept what technology was providing, not necessarily got stakeholder backing of actually what they want to do with IT. There was a business strategy sat there. There was an IT, and it was called a strategy, but actually it's a couple of plans with we might change a printer, we might do X. It wasn't a true strategy about where IT was going. Contracted services. So when I walked in, consultant walking in, first day into an organisation, was like, okay, so who are your suppliers, what do they provide? And I got, well, we don't quite know. We had a massive list of suppliers. Not all of them were on the list. And at the end of it, you looked at it and thought, hold on, there's money which has just been waiting because we're not actually unifying what we're doing. We've got, and this is the bit which I was surprised at, we had over 20 different providers in the organisation providing voice or network connections. So can you imagine that? You can't even transfer a call from one office to another. And by the way, choice support is based across multiple sites. You know, we've got offices in London, up to Wakefield, out into Hampshire, into Milton Keynes, and up into Stockport and Crewe. So we're based all around, yet we didn't actually have the ability to transfer calls through the environment. It's not really a good situation to be in. Our network infrastructure just wasn't integrated at all. And because of all of that, you know, people just didn't trust that IT would work for them. You know, we can't connect, we can't use, we can't work in the services where we're supporting our users. We can't operate. So again, it's that problem which you walked into. I had an IT help desk which was on board at the time, 5 people in total, 1 line manager, and 4 first and second line engineers in-house who were very young, very inexperienced, and were just firefighting constantly. They didn't have the support and understanding of actually what they needed to do and how to drive changes forward in the organisation. And a little bit of history for choice support. When I joined in 2014, I became the 5th IT manager in less than 4 years. So I can imagine that turnover of people, ideas, strategy. I mean, nothing was what you'd expect for a charity to move forward, and been wanting to grow as well. We had disparate communications, which I've mentioned. And one of the biggest things I did was I just turned around and said, right, okay, we've got all these. What we do is we cease. We cease all the different suppliers we've got on board. We review every single contract step by step. And we cease all of our different voice and network providers. We go out for a request for proposal, put a tender in place for exactly what we want so we can communicate and we find a solution to move forward. And so, at the end of it, we partnered up with Newton.
Okay, so as Vanessa said, Choice Support is an incredibly distributed organisation. So connecting these was for us the key, and the WAN was the key component to that. MPLS network was the solution we implemented. It's a private network with all sites connected via a core routed network. The core network is enterprise level equipment that effectively runs the internet. Highly resilient. It's more efficient than a VPN because there's no encryption, it's just core routing. And it's the core network that everything connects into. MPLS actually stands for multi-protocol label switching, bit of a mouthful. What that actually means is you have the capability of labeling applications or transport protocols and prioritizing or deprioritizing those across the network. Ironically, in a sort of ever-evolving world, bandwidth is becoming so cheap that the need to prioritize applications often is more hassle and more cost than just upping the bandwidth. So each site we were able to look at individually, and we were able to scale the connection into the MPLS depending on a number of factors. Bandwidth, small connections for very small sites, large or duplicated connections for much larger sites. We could use multiple carriers. So OpenReach, Virgin, Colt, we were able to use multiple technologies, so copper or fibre. We were able to use different transport mechanisms, so Ethernet, ADSL, Ethernet over ADSL. So every site connecting in a spoke, as you were, into the network was able to be designed for what would fit the budget and the requirement. So once you had this, you've got an ability to put in a single internet transit point. For Choice Support, it was a fully virtualized, duplicated, hosted Palo Alto firewall. A single point means a single point of control, single point of security. In the same vein, we had a single handoff for the hosting providers that Choice Support were using. You know, one connection or duplicated connection would provide across all sites and all users. So all applications shared this MPLS, absolutely every single one. All data, all voice, all video, all monitoring and control of the network was done within that. So that was the first step really to unifying their communications. Once the WAN was in place, we were able to put the other UC components on top of that. So we implemented a single enterprise voice solution across all sites, all users off-site as well. Again, like in that example slide, using a vast array of different devices and connections. So we had desk phones, we've got conference units, video conferencing, we've got soft phones on laptops, soft phones on smartphones. We're even bridging across from their unified communication sphere and using the PSTN analog line network and the mobile network to extend that communication out to people who are not directly within the Choice Support umbrella. A user is just a profile, and they are able to communicate depending on what device and what connectivity they've got access to at any one time. It's a continually evolving process, so video will be increased, we'll be virtualizing it to simplify control and monitoring of that platform as well. In a single vein, in a similar vein, the LAN infrastructure was rationalized and unified. So we had a single product set across all the locations, providing all LAN, both wireless and wired, corporate and guest networks, and VLANs. This single product set gave us a single point of administration and control for all of those. And actually it gave us an extra layer of monitoring, an application layer, where we can down to protocols, we can even look what social media people are looking at, what's trending. So we're able to control the traffic flow across their network. The whole network with single point of administration enabled Choice Support to outsource their desktop, server and application support to another third party. Without having a unified platform and communication, they would not have been able to do that. And lastly, single supplier. It's not your typical unified communication component, but it is really one of the only ways that you're able to get all the bits and bobs and all the aspects and the technologies talking to one another, so that you're able to give a truly unified communication experience to the users and to their service users. Thank you.
I think I'd like to add on that from Mathew. It's the fact that all of the management with the outsourcing and being done by Newton IT, we actually now manage our costs and manage our service. We report truly on our service and our performance. We can look down where someone says, do you know what, it works, it's absolutely rubbish in the Hampshire area, we can't get online. Probably trying to check the Facebook page in a lot of our users, but they can't get online and do what they're expecting to do. We go on, we can see exactly who's using it, even which smartphone's been connected to the network, which applications are running, and which person is just upgrading iTunes on the corporate network if they're trying. And we can block those people as well. So we can do all this type of things. And that's about really how we move forward within Choice Support. So the infrastructure which we put in place and we agreed, we worked as a partnership as well with Newton. So yes, they were a preferred supplier. And one thing I want to say about this is when you're choosing a supplier to work with, biggest is not always the best one. It's the one who can actually work well with what your charity is trying to achieve. That's one of the reasons why I did have responses back from a few big players as well. At the end of it, although they were doing the best to cost into it, and some of them came great price, the thing I knew is that the working relationship we could do with Newton to actually respond when we wanted to and enable us worked well for us. And that's why we looked at some of the transformation. Now, when we walked into IT and originally, 2014, senior management team did not understand what IT was delivering for them. Senior management team now understand exactly what IT enables. They can see the benefits of it. We actually get thank yous rather than someone trying to knock onto the door to come into the office to scream that a laptop doesn't work or they can't talk to another site. So we actually get thanks from the management team. So actually we're doing the service and we're providing the service in the right way. And that's about what the network and the voice has actually enabled for us. So we've now got a true strategy. We have an IT strategy and it's completely aligned to the business strategy and the long-term business goals for the organisation. No one can go through. So, I said that we were struggling before. We had 20 different suppliers in. What I didn't actually mention was that if you had your own little budget, you could go off and employ someone and say, actually go and put me another network in here. There was absolutely no controls of who would even spend the money of IT. So it's not surprising that really we weren't spending money in the right way as an organisation. So again, that's one of the big changes which is done. We now work together. It's fully that we have an approved business case to go through. So one of my area divisional directors fell foul of the business case process in 2015 because they just told me they were moving offices in 2 weeks. I said, thank you very much. And they'd already engaged a different supplier for a voice solution. I said, well, thank you very much, but you won't be moving and you won't be operating until you actually can come on board with the network. And again, it's that changes we could do because at the end of it, what they were buying in was not cost effective for the business. It wasn't manageable. It would bring in more security risks for us. It's now manageable because of that single point of going out into the internet. I'm actually seeing everything. I can log on at home, because yes, I'm not based in London. I do travel into the office in London on a regular basis. I can log on at home and I can actually see who's on, who's using our corporate network, and I can see what's going on with the traffic. We now have stats showing for one of the first times ever in our IT room in London, which actually show how much traffic is going through our network. We also show our call desk. So when I joined, we had 180 calls outstanding every month running forward. Now, we've got an outsourced service desk. We liaise with a couple of key suppliers. We now have 5 IT calls, normally at the most, carried forward from one month to the other. People were waiting for 3 to 6 months to get equipment, to get services. Now they're lucky if they wait longer than a week, week and a half. And the IT department has changed completely. So what we're now doing in the IT department is we concentrate on third-party supplier management and governance. So we put all the governance wraps around what we do with the third-party supplier. So again, when we're looking at it, we look at service, we look at change control, we look at future innovation, because actually we can. We're no longer firefighting, we can look at what's coming forward in the technologies. And I've got key suppliers, I can see what's going on in the marketplace, and I will ring the key suppliers up and say, okay, this is coming forward. Is that something Choice Support can look at? Is it something we can add on? Will it give us a benefit? Will it deliver what we want? And again, with partners with Newton and with a couple of other companies we work with, we see exactly which applications will work for us and provide the services we want. With our service desk now being outsourced, means that the IT department has changed in its entirety. Everyone who works within the IT department, apart from the management team who do the governance, are now super users. They are enablers to the business. So our users who were scared of technology, it wasn't that they didn't understand the technology so much. They were completely technophobic. The best description I can give you. Really, really petrified. In walking in, you talk to people nowadays, they're actually happy to use their equipment. They understand that they can get the responses out of the equipment, responses out of the network and the applications because it's now linked. That is one of the biggest changes we've done is we now have an organisation we link together and we have that supply management. So I want to tell you something. I was working out in the organisation, I was looking at our budget and looking at our costs because you think, well, she's talking great, that sounds lovely, and she's outsourced a load of bits and pieces. She doesn't run a massive IT department to run all these different networks anymore. She's outsourced it. That's going to cost her a fortune. So I looked at the budget from before I joined, and I've done my predictions until 2020. Do you know that my budget is less going forward every year than what it was when I joined this organisation? And that's through putting the correct technology in and the correct relationships and putting the correct services in place for the organisation. So actually ensuring that what we put in place is a network which can grow. So now, when a manager actually rings to me and says, actually, I do need to put a new site on, yes, we've won a new contract with a council out in a different part of the country, we say, right, we can open an office up, get a survey done, the guys will review what we actually need to go through, we'll sign it all off, but we know exactly what costs. We know what cost the managed services are. So in my view, I've got money well spent, but I'm still actually saving money on OPEX costs from year on year. Now, I worked in banking and I don't remember saving money. I remember we looked at it, but every time we'd always have new costs coming on, extra 5% on this, RPI coming up, everything's increasing in cost. I'm sure most of you, your IT budgets are increasing dramatically. Yet what we've done with the change in how we've operated has actually given us better benefits. We've got better services. People actually like the IT department. We still get shouted at occasionally when things go badly wrong, but I don't think anyone around the table is different. But the fundamental thing is we can communicate. And, you know, how many of you are here today? Little question, how many of you here today are actually on a phone, talking to the office, looking at your emails, going back through? And how many of you would be able to do that if you actually don't have your network and your infrastructure in place, managed and delivering it, that you can actually operate? And that's a change. And for the charity I work for, it was a fundamental change. So, and I came in as an IT manager, and I was a bit different than the others because I wasn't trying to grow a massive IT department. I actually just went in and said, you know what, your business is not an IT company. Why are you trying to grow in a massive IT department to deliver this? Your business is a social care charity. So bring the experts in, pay the right amount for a charity. Of course, we always want it cheaper than anyone else likes it. So keep it as cheap as possible, but get the services you need and provide the support to the individuals you need. At the end of it, we've actually changed everything. So again, the bits about what we do, we can now mentor staff and we can coach staff about how to use the applications. It's a bit unheard of, but with our IT department, internally, we're just migrating all of our systems into a brand new service, and we're running a little bit fast for the organisation, I must admit, but within about 4 months, I'll have moved every system, every desktop to brand new versions, brand new applications, and full cloud support as well. So again, we are completely changing, and that's because the infrastructure we've got underpinning everything we do, the network and the comms which we've got, allows us to actually move forward. It's one of the biggest things in our charity. Just checking if I've missed anything. So, future for choice support, and also probably for Newton as well. So I've got my long-term plan. I've got my 3 years worth of what we're going to do, and I've got my 3 years worth of costs, and as they now heard, it's going down, not up. So I'm sure they won't like that one. But where we're standard, I know that the organisation is looking at what they can do in care applications moving forward, what they can do in terms of CRM systems or anything else in the market. But because we've now got the fundamentals put together, we can now bolt those on. It's no longer a hardship to actually think of how the hell we're going to enable that to the rest of our organisation, how we're going to provide that skill. And we're now moving forward to the applications are now running on smartphones. So again, the charity can grow how it wants. Thank you.